All right, in week 7, where the focus is on motor skills development, and I'm going to begin by talking about sensation and perception. Sensation occurs when information from the environment reaches our receptors for sensory information. So, when information hits our eyes or our ears or our tongues or our nose or our skin, when that message reaches the brain from that sensory receptor and the brain interprets it and makes sense of what that message means, that's what we call perception. So sensation and perception are different. One is the initial register of that information from the environment. Perception is the interpretation of what that sensation means. And newborns, when we're born, we're already starting to develop our sensory and perceptual development aspects of development. And there's quite a bit of development in the first 2 years of life during infancy and toddlerhood. So, for each of the different sensations, I'll go through in turn. First, with touch, what's called haptic discrimination means that infants can discriminate by feel. They can tell if something feels rough or something feels smooth. They can discriminate by weight. If one thing is heavier than another, they can tell those apart. Um, in terms of visual sensation, at birth, our vision is not very acute. We're very nearsighted on at birth. Our vision is about 2,500, which means what a newborn sees at 20 feet is the equivalent of what a typically seeing adult would see at 500 feet. And if you think about that, uh, it's not really great vision. We know some things about uh, what infants prefer to look at. So if we put an infant into a gazing chamber, which looks kind of like a car seat that we could look down at the infant's eyes or record the infant's eyes and measure what they're looking at. We know that they prefer to look at stripes over plain solid colors. We know they prefer three-dimensional objects over two-dimensional objects. They prefer human faces, coherent human faces, over a picture of scrambled up eyes and noses and other human facial features. They prefer to look at solid patterns over colors, uh, or patterns over solid colors. Newborn infants are very nearsighted, but by about 6 months of age, the muscles in their eyes have matured to allow focus that's similar to adult visual clarity. A newborn, their point of focus is at about 18 inches, which, if you think about that, if you think about a caregiver holding an infant, that's about the distance from their face to the infant. Uh, Also, newborns have a lower proportion of what are called cones in the eyes, and cones are what allow us to see uh, colors in our vision. So newborns aren't they don't see in black and white, but they don't see the distinction in colors that we do as adults until about 3 months of age, when the number of cone cells in their eyes becomes equivalent to an adult. Uh, that means that infants prefer and are able to really register very strong, vibrant colors. We often think of sort of subtle pastel colors for newborns, but really they don't prefer those. They don't see those very well. They prefer the really vivid, striking colors. Depth perception is present at birth. This isn't something that develops later. They're able to see uh, depth. It's important that young children have regular vision screenings to identify potential visual problems, and treatment before the transition to elementary school can prevent vision loss. A couple of common visual problems are functional amblyopia. This is what you might hear called lazy eye. It's when there's an imbalance between the movement between the two eyes. And strabismus, where the focus is misaligned. So this might be, you may have heard this called cross-eyed. So this is the misalignment. In contrast to vision, taste and smell are well developed at birth. And in fact, taste seems to begin in utero. Uh, Newborns distinguish between salty, sweet, sour, and bitter taste. They prefer the smell and taste of breast milk over formula. They prefer the smell of their own mother's breast milk to other mother's breast milk. So they've already got these preferences uh, really soon after birth. Another sensory ability that's uh, working really well at birth is hearing. Our our hearing really only declines as we grow older across a lifespan. It's never going to function as well as it does early on, and so it's functioning well at birth. Infants prefer human voices. They prefer the pitch and loudness of female voices, which means they will turn towards those or listen to them for longer. They can discriminate between their mother's voice and other female voices, and they can make fine distinguishing distinctions between sounds, which means they can hear the phonemes, which are the most basic elements of sound. And later, when we talk about language development, we'll see that very young infants can hear all the different phonemes in every different human language, even though as adults we can't hear phonemes that we weren't exposed to early on in age. Infants are born with some physical reflexes. Uh, some of those stay with us for life, like a blinking reflex. If something comes towards your eyes, you'll blink. Others go away. Infants have a reflex that if you put something in their mouth, they'll start to suck on it, or if you tickle their cheek, they'll start rooting, looking for something to latch onto. Those go away and become more intentionally controlled as the brain matures, and so uh, infants begin to be able to modify those reflexes. And the example here is speeding up or slowing down how fast they're sucking, and they begin to combine them. So they may suck on their thumb by combining those movements. Uh, there are different rates of maturation in different systems of the body.